The Peak never asked Samuel Hayes for love, only to keep going. For almost 40 years, he gave it just that. He lived alone in a small cabin he built with his own hands. Pine trees stood close, like quiet guards. Winters stayed too long. Snow came early. Wind cut deep. The cold taught him one simple rule: warmth must be earned, not expected. Before we dive into this tale of solitude turning into something more, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from right now? Is it a bustling city like New York, or somewhere quieter? And what's the time on your end? Maybe around 11:39 p.m. like here? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartfelt narratives that blend right into your day. Down in the Glen, people called him the Summit Man. They said his shoulders were shaped by axes and storms. His voice was quiet because he had no one to talk to. Most people treated him like the summits above, solid, far away, and hard to reach. They did not think much about his heart. If they did, they thought it was as hard as the rock under his boots. Samuel did not argue with any of it. He learned long ago that needing people could break a man. Being alone felt safer. He could depend on his hands, his tools, and the steady change of the seasons. But as the years went by, the nights felt longer. The wind sounded louder. The cabin felt too quiet, as if the silence was pushing in. Then a letter arrived. It was folded and smelled a little of ink and dust. Samuel stood at his table and read it twice. The words felt strange in his life. The letter offered a marriage based on need, not love. A woman would come to him. In return, he would give her a home, food, and safety. It was not written like a love story. It was written like a simple deal. Samuel accepted it with the same calm he gave to a coming storm. He told himself it made sense. Loneliness had started to feel louder than the wind at night. Maybe a woman in his cabin would quiet that feeling. He did not tell himself to hope. Hope could make a man careless. The letter described the woman in a few plain lines. She was a widow, quiet, used to hard times, ready to come to the summits for a life with little comfort. Samuel folded the paper and put it in the pocket of his wool coat. He told himself the deal would be fair, even if it was never warm. On the morning she was supposed to arrive, the summit woke under a pale sky. Frost stuck to the edges like thin glass. Samuel stood outside his cabin longer than usual. He listened for a sound he had not heard in years. Another person. He told himself not to expect much. He did not imagine laughter in the cabin or long talks by the fire. Expectation led to disappointment, and disappointment had no place in a life built on survival. Still, his eyes kept going to the narrow trail through the trees. When the wagon finally appeared, it looked too small for such a long trip. It moved slowly, wheels crunching over frozen ground. Samuel stayed still as it came closer, as if moving might bring a feeling he did not understand. Then the woman stepped down. She was not what he expected. She was small, but she stood steady on the uneven trail. Her dress was old but clean. Her dark hair was pinned neatly, even after the rough ride. When she looked up to meet his eyes, there was no fear, only calm. That calm made him uneasy. She introduced herself as Emily, Carter, simply. Her voice was soft, but sure. She thanked him for meeting her as if it was kindness, not just duty. Samuel nodded, but words stuck in his throat. He was used to talking to the summit, the wind, or himself. Talking to a person felt like using a muscle he had not used in years. He took her bag without thinking, and they walked to the cabin. Samuel started explaining summit life. He told her where the water came from, how to keep the fire going, which trails were safe and which could be dangerous without warning. He spoke in short, careful sentences, keeping his tone plain. She listened without interrupting. She did not question him or complain. She took in each detail like it mattered, like she planned to stay. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. The space was clean but plain, made for use, not comfort. Samuel put her bag near the wall and pointed to a small room off the main space. He said it would be hers. In a steady voice, he told her he expected no more than shared work and shared space. No romance, no sweet promises, no dreams. He did not look at her when he said it. He feared he might see disappointment and feel bad for it. But she surprised him. She smiled. Not big or silly, but with quiet understanding that filled the room like warmth. She told him she had not come looking for a fairy tale. She came for a place to belong and for a man who kept his word. Those words stayed with him longer than they should have. That night, the summit got dark early. The wind pushed against the cabin walls. Samuel lay in his bed and listened to new sounds: soft footsteps, the careful closing of a door, the steady breathing of another person under his roof. He expected the feeling to bother him, to make him restless. Instead, something else happened. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. Days went on with a careful rhythm, like two strangers learning to share the same path without bumping into each other. Samuel watched her quietly. He expected awkward moments, mistakes, or fear, but she moved through the cabin as if she had lived through hard times and knew how to adjust. She learned the stove quickly. She treated his tools with respect. When she asked questions, they were thoughtful, not doubtful. When she spoke about her past, she did it without anger. She saw loss as a fact, not a wound. Samuel told himself not to look for more, not to read meaning into small things, not to notice how she left a mug warming near the fire for him when he came back from the cold, not to notice how she saw his hurt shoulder stiffen and took on the heavier work without a word, because this marriage was not meant to change him, it was meant to last. But change came anyway, quiet as snow falling at night. It came so softly he did not see it until one morning when the world looked different, and he could not explain why. Samuel found himself staying at the table longer, listening when she spoke. He noticed the softness in her laugh when something small amused her. He noticed the strength in her silence when words were not needed. One evening, a storm howled outside and the fire burned low. She looked at him and asked about the scar along his jaw, not to pry, but to understand. The memory came up before he could stop it. To his surprise, he started talking. He told her a story he had never told anyone. His voice was rough, his words slow, and something in his chest felt tight as he spoke. She did not flinch. She did not try to fix what could not be fixed. She just listened, steady and quiet. When he finished, she thanked him for trusting her. That simple sentence hit him harder than it should have. It made him feel something he had forgotten: warmth. As Samuel lay there reflecting on that warmth spreading through his life, just like how a quiet moment can change everything. Pause with me for a second. Where are you following this story from today? Maybe from California or somewhere across the world. And what's the clock saying right now? Perhaps nearing midnight? If this tale is resonating with you so far, hit that like button and subscribe to keep these blended stories coming your way seamlessly. Spring did not come all at once on the summit. It came slowly, as if not sure it was welcome. Snow still stuck in shaded places, hiding between rocks and trees, but the air got softer day by day. Mornings had a gentle light that did not cut as sharp as before. Samuel noticed the change most in himself. He woke before dawn and lay still, listening. For years, mornings started in silence, broken only by wind or the fire dying out. Now there were other sounds: a kettle on the stove, a careful step across the floor, a quiet breath from the next room. Strange as it felt, those sounds became the calmest part of his day. For most of his life, Samuel believed being alone was strength. Needing no one meant no one could leave him, no one could fail him, no one could break what he had worked so hard to keep together. The summit had taught him that lesson early and well. But Emily, who came under a cold deal, began to undo that belief without trying. She did it simply by staying. Their days filled with work that never really ended on the summit. They fixed a fence that winter storms had broken. They cleared heavy branches from the trail where snow had snapped old trees. They turned soil for a small garden in the spot with the most sunlight. Samuel worked as he always had, steady and quiet, but now he was not alone. He watched her hands as she worked. They were strong hands, quick and careful. She did not rush, but she did not waste time. There was a gentleness in how she handled even rough tasks, as if she respected the land instead of fighting it. The more Samuel noticed, the more something moved inside him. It was not just admiration, it was fear. Admiration pulled a man closer. Fear warned him what closeness could cost. She spoke more now, still not a lot, but enough to fill the space between them. She pointed out how the fog settled over the trees in the morning. She mentioned how the creek sounded different when the ice broke. Once, while they stood near the cabin watching clouds move slowly across the sky, she said softly that it must have been lonely for him all those years. She did not say it like blame. She said it like truth. The words tightened his chest. No one had ever named his loneliness out loud. People in the glen called him strong, wild, hard. No one asked what it did to a man to spend decades talking only to the wind.
Samuel said nothing. He did not trust his voice with that truth yet. He tried to keep distance. He reminded himself the marriage started from need and should stay practical. But practicality failed when he noticed small changes in the cabin. The table was set for two, even on days he spoke little. His coat was hung closer to the fire to dry faster. A second blanket appeared on his chair without a word. These were not big acts, but they carried care, and care softened places he had kept frozen for years. The turning moment came on a day that should have been normal. Samuel went farther down the trail than usual to check his traps. Snow had melted enough to make the ground slippery, and patches of mud hid under thin ice. He stepped wrong near a place he had crossed many times before. His boots slipped, his body twisted. He fell hard against a hidden rock. Pain shot through him, sharp and sudden. His breath left in a harsh gasp. His shoulder burned and warm blood spread under his shirt. He lay there staring up at the branches above, the sky broken into pieces by pine needles. Fear rose in him, raw and new. Not fear of death, but fear of leaving her alone. He forced himself up, teeth clenched. Every move brought pain through his body. Each step back to the cabin felt like fire under his skin. When he finally reached the door, his strength gave out. He fell in the doorway like a man twice his age. She was there in an instant. The sound she made was not a scream. It was a broken gasp, like something inside her tore open. Then she moved with calm purpose. She pulled him inside, laid him down, and went to work like she had done it before. She cleaned the wound. She pressed cloth against the blood. She did her best to set his shoulder. Her hands were steady, even while fear shone in her eyes. Samuel drifted in and out of darkness. Between the waves, he felt her presence close. He heard her voice, soft but firm, telling him to stay still, telling him he was not allowed to leave her with this mess of a man. The words should have angered him. Instead, they made him feel wanted. When he woke later, the pain settled into a deep ache. The cabin was dim. The fire burned low. She sat nearby, hands clasped tight, eyes red from worry. She looked up the moment he moved, as if she had not rested at all. She helped him drink water. No mocking, no scolding, only care. Samuel stared at the ceiling and realized no one had ever looked after him like this. Not out of duty, not as payment, but because she could not bear the thought of losing him.
Recovery forced him into stillness. It forced him to accept help. Helplessness stripped away the hard shell he wore like armor. In those quiet days, she spoke more of her past. She told him her first marriage taught her to endure, not to love. She lived years feeling unseen, like a shadow in her own home. When she became a widow, she learned loneliness in a crowded place could feel worse than being alone in an empty one. That was why she came. Not because she expected happiness, but because she wanted honesty. A life where silence was real, not fake. Samuel listened, his chest tight. He confessed in a rough voice that he never expected her to change anything. He prepared for shared space, not shared life. He planned for survival, not connection. She looked at him calm and firm, and told him she did not come to be endured. She came to belong. Those words demanded a choice, and Samuel had built his life avoiding choices that involved other people. As his strength returned, spring fully claimed the summit. Wildflowers pushed through thawed soil. Birds returned to the trees. The air smelled of wet earth and promise. With the land waking up, their bond grew deeper. They laughed sometimes, surprised by the sound. Samuel began to imagine a future that was more than survival, a future with shared evenings by the fire, a warmth that had nothing to do with flames. Then the summit tested them. It began with voices on the trail. Samuel stepped outside and saw movement between the trees. Men from the glen climbed toward the cabin, carrying bags and papers with looks that did not belong here. Old instincts rose in him fast: protect, push away, stand alone. He told her he would handle it. He told her to think about leaving before things turned dangerous. The hurt in her eyes cut deeper than his injury. Before she could answer, the men reached the clearing. The leader lifted a folded document like a weapon. He said the land was no longer Samuel's. A railroad wanted a route through the summit. The glen decided Samuel's claim was not valid. The cabin was his life, every board cut by his hands, every winter survived here. Samuel told them to leave. They did not move. The leader warned they would return with more men if Samuel did not come down to sign. Samuel turned to tell her to pack, to go somewhere safe. She stepped beside him instead. She did not hide. She stood close enough that he felt her strength. She asked one simple question: where was their proof? The leader dismissed her. She did not move. For the first time, Samuel felt relief standing with someone instead of alone. The men left with threats, but they left fear behind. That night, the cabin felt tight. Samuel stared at the table, trying to fight papers with no voice. He said he would handle it alone. She laid old documents in front of him and told him the truth needed a voice. He told her to leave again. The hurt returned. She asked if pushing people away was how he handled fear. Samuel realized he stood where he always had, back against the world, alone. He looked at her and saw what he would lose. He admitted he did not know how to belong to someone. She told him she was not asking for perfection. She asked him to stop shutting her out. Samuel nodded. The next morning, they went down the summit together. The glen watched. Samuel felt small among people, but she walked steady beside him. Inside the office, lies began to crack under questions. An older man remembered Samuel's claim. Pressure grew. Truth came out. The threat broke. They left the office together. Outside, Samuel stopped and looked at her. He said he was glad she stayed. She said she never wanted to leave. They climbed back up the summit together. The trail felt different now. When they reached the cabin, Samuel saw it clearly for the first time. It was not just shelter, it was home. Summer settled over the summit like a quiet promise. The days grew longer and the sunlight reached places it never had before. The cabin no longer felt like a shelter pressed against the world. It felt open, alive, as if it was breathing with the land around it. Samuel felt the change every morning when he stepped outside. The air was warmer. The wind no longer cut through him like a blade, and when he turned back toward the cabin, he no longer saw just a building of wood and stone. He saw a place where someone waited. The land dispute did not vanish overnight. The Glen office sent letters. Men talked. Rumors moved faster than truth. But the threat no longer held the same power. Samuel had faced it. He had spoken, and he had not done it alone. That mattered more than he could explain. Emily stayed steady through it all. She did not push him. She did not celebrate too early. She simply lived beside him, sharing the work and the quiet, trusting that what they had built together would hold. And it did. The garden they planted began to grow. Green shoots pushed through the soil, fragile but strong. Samuel watched them with a strange sense of pride. He had always believed strength meant standing against the world. Now he saw strength in caring for something living, something that needed attention. Evenings became his favorite time of day. They sat outside the cabin when the light softened, watching the sky change color. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they did not. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt full, like a shared understanding that did not need words. Samuel noticed how easily her presence fit into his life. Now the rhythm of their days felt natural, not forced. He found himself reaching for her without thinking, handing her tools, asking her thoughts, listening when she spoke. Trust had settled between them, slowly, like deep roots taking hold. One night, as they sat near the fire, Samuel realized something that made his chest tighten. He could not imagine the cabin without her anymore. The thought did not bring fear, it brought clarity. He had built his life to survive alone. Now he wanted to live it with someone. The realization did not come with big words or sudden actions. It came quietly, the way most true things did in his life. He looked at her across the firelight and saw not duty, not agreement, but choice. She was here because she wanted to be, and so was he. He spoke that night in a voice that still carried rough edges but held honesty. He told her he had never planned for love. He told her he thought needing someone was weakness. He admitted he had been wrong. She listened the same way she always had, steady and open. When he finished, she told him she never came to change him. She came to stand beside him. She said love did not mean taking away his strength. It meant sharing it. Samuel felt something settle deep inside him, like a long-held weight finally put down. The land issue returned one last time at the end of summer. Another letter arrived, formal and cold. Samuel read it slowly, then folded it and set it aside. He no longer felt that old fear twist in his gut. He knew who he was, he knew what he had built, and he knew who he stood with. They went down to the glen together again. This time, Samuel walked with his head up. He spoke clearly. Others listened. The claim was settled. The summit was his. When they returned home, Samuel stood in the clearing and let the quiet sink in. The trees, the wind, the cabin, all of it felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because he had. As autumn approached, the summit prepared for another winter. Samuel stocked wood and supplies as he always had, but the work felt lighter. He was not preparing for being alone anymore. He was preparing for shared nights, shared warmth, shared life. On the first cold evening of the season, they sat together by the fire. Snow had not fallen yet, but the air hinted it would soon. Samuel looked at her and felt no fear of the long months ahead. For the first time, winter did not feel like something to endure. It felt like something to face together. Samuel Hayes had prepared for a cold, loveless marriage on the summit. He had expected survival and silence. What he found instead was belonging. And there you have it, the end of this warming story of unexpected connection. Before we wrap up, tell me, where have you been listening from as this tale unfolded? From Texas or elsewhere? And what's the time showing now? Still around evening? If it touched you, please like and subscribe so we can share more stories that feel like they're part of your own journey.